So the Quakers, for people who are not familiar what Quakers believe and why I argue that wokeism evolved out of it. So Quakers believe that what you hear inside of you, like what you feel is true, is like God talking to you. And that means that the way that they pray is they go to these public meetings, and whenever anybody, they like don't have an official preacher, but whenever anybody feels compelled to, because they think God is talking through them to say something, they stand up and start talking. This is how like God interacts with and talks with Quakers. And they think that kids have like the highest amount of this God juice. So they were like, have kids like morally chastise adults. And this is interesting because this is also something you see in wokeism, was like Greta Thunberg. Every other culture on earth thinks having a child morally chastise adults is stupid. It's a child.
It's like, listen to the kids when they speak.
Yeah, and I'm like, no, they're being children. What are you doing? So they would they stand up, but the Quakers had this big split with this group called the Hicksites that split off from the main Quakers because they said that what you hear inside of you is superior, like it's a higher source of truth than what's in the Bible. They started taking over Quaker worship sites. Like they'd grow in number, and the moment they were the majority, they would lock the doors and not let anyone else in during prayer time, right? Like very woke-ish behavior. And so this group of Quakers ended up being the predominant group in the early school system in the United States.
Oh, geez.
So basically, whatever you feel is true. And if you think about the meetings that they had, like everybody just sitting down and then standing up when they feel something to speak, it sounds a lot like an Occupy Wall Street meeting or like one of these super woke meetings, right? Like no real authority, everything like that. It's all down to like your feelings, right? That whatever you feel is intuitively true is intuitively true. Like, and it doesn't matter what's objectively true about what your group is doing. So like your group can, on paper, own dramatically more slaves than anyone else, but also be the leaders of the abolition movement. It requires a complete, or allows for a complete disconnect between what is true and what is like what you do that's more, right? Like, you can say, we never hurt Indians. We're always nice to Indians. And then when Indians get in your way, you settle the backwoods people next to them because you know what happens next whenever you settle the backwoods people next to Indians. They generally start killing each other, and then eventually the backwoods people wipe out all the Native Americans.
They don't really care. They just care about looking like they're doing the right thing. They don't care
about looking, the optics. Yeah. So this is the group that, and the Anabaptists, who are the Germans, this is like the Amish, the Mennonites, because they like pathologically hate power and don't want to get power for themselves. They basically let the Quakers rule over them. For people who are wondering how into slavery Quakers were, we have writings from the Anabaptists who talk about slavery as a Quaker institution. They thought of it as a uniquely Quaker thing. Like it was known as among the Amish as, oh, that thing the Quakers do.
Oh my God.
Because the Puritans, who the Anabaptists also know, were not into slavery. They did not like slavery very much at all. They were the actual, they were the actual real reformers, not prohibition, whatever you call it, like anti-slavery. Anyway, but they did like crazy stuff, like like John Brown was a Puritan Calvinist, right? Mm-hmm. You know, they just fucking went to a slave state and started murdering people. The people involved in Bleeding Kansas, where you had like the real, these were all Puritans, and some backwoods people, abolitionists. That's the word I'm looking for. I don't know why I kept going prohibitionist. Okay, so, but their group more broadly is just like a very chill group, like the German group, the Anabaptist descendants. And their whole region in that map that you were looking at is just like a very chill region. It's like the Midwest. It's like, you don't fuck with us, we won't fuck with you. You do your own thing, we do our own thing. We don't really, oh, you think you're better than us? Whatever, I don't care. Oh, you think, like, this is the way the Anabaptists were with like the Quakers. Oh, the Quakers think you're better than, what? don't fucking care.
Yeah.
I've got my own thing here. I've got my kids. I got my wife. I'm building great houses. The Swedes also heavily moved into this group. Then you've got the Cavalier cultural group.
Those like the people like the what do you call it, like the English basically.
Yeah, so the English, this is a group that made up the Deep South. So the English had a few groups that migrated to the United States. Almost, I mean, every one of these groups was a group of English. You had the Puritans, who were English, who moved because they wanted more religious freedoms. You had the Quakers, who were English, who moved because they wanted more religious freedoms. You had the backwoods people, who were originally Scottish, who moved because they kept killing people. That's actually like what happened. So the Reavers just like kept killing anyone near them, and they kept raiding all the surrounding territory. And so the British Crown was like, okay, you guys seem to really love killing people and be quite good at it. So Ireland's been a real problem for us recently. So we're gonna move you guys to Ireland. And so they moved them all to Ireland. And then they were treated terribly by the Irish, just absolutely terribly. Like the Irish would like murder them at night and stuff like that. But they also did still keep killing people. So that was like a thing. And eventually people were like, okay, we should probably move because the Irish really hate us here. And I heard that in America, there's like land that's like not fully occupied, and the people there are easier to kill.
Oh my God.
And so they got on boats and they went and they moved to across like the Pennsylvania and the South. They basically moved to all the port areas. And the reason why they're in that like inland region is because everyone, when they got off the boats, was like, get the fuck out. Get the fuck out of my city. Get the fuck out of my territory. Get out, get out, get out. And so they all ended up on the edges of the civilized world at that point, right? This is what the greater Appalachian region is. It's like a swath at the edges of civilization at that point.
Yeah.
And most of the other groups quite liked them in that position because they didn't really have the institutional power to be involved with politics, and they prevented any larger Indian raids, any larger Indian problems, because some of the Indians during that period were quite violent, killing babies and everything like that. I do not know how, like, we don't talk about, some of the Indians were not violent, but you had to be aware that it was hard to know if they were from a violent tribe or a not violent tribe. And, you couldn't easily tell, and they could fake it. And, they could be from, whatever. So, put these people in the border region. So the Cavaliers were also from England, but they were generally the second sons of nobility. This was like, yes, I said I'm Blackfoot and can confirm we fuck shit up. Yeah, generally the Indians who fuck shit up the most are the ones who survived, by the way, for a couple reasons. One is the backwoods people generally liked Indians who were more willing to defend themselves. The Apache had a separate country within the United States that was really big, for people who don't know, but also because it like kept out other people. Like the Seminoles were one of the most violent Indian groups in America, and they survived really well. Whereas the nicer Indian groups like the Cherokees did not do particularly well. And somebody said the Comanche were brutal. Yeah. Yeah. I'm thinking of not the Apache. I'm thinking of Comanchedom. Comanchedom was the big. Comanches were horrifying, maybe one of the most brutal groups in world history in terms of the way that they would treat areas and other Indians, mind you. They were really, really brutal. They got to the extent where America just decided to exterminate them, if I remember correctly. Anyway, sorry, we'll talk about Indian groups later. I'm talking about the various groups. So the Deep South was made up of the second sons of aristocrats in England. If you look at the different colonies, right, and you go to like Plymouth. Why was Plymouth founded? everybody who studies American history pretty much remember this. It was founded because they wanted to create the city on a hill. They wanted to create a pure ideological community, right? And I think that this is still one of the visions of America. Why were the Virginia colonies founded? Because people thought there was gold. It's not just that. They just like only cared about money and stuff. And then when they learned about tobacco, they were like, oh yeah, we can do tobacco. Comanche scalp people, a lot of people scalp people. The backwoods people scalped people too. The backwoods people adopted a lot of Indian practices. That was the other thing about them. They were like, whenever they see another group doing something better than them, they're just like, oh, that seems better adapted for this environment. Yeah, sure. They were well known for intermarrying with Indians at a rate that astonished the Quakers and the Puritans, who hated that. Because they were basically like, anyone who's strong, yeah, you come in. Anyone who's not strong, we don't want you.
Hey, Raging Golden Eagle, thank you for the raid. Thank you.
Somebody said Sam Houston scalped people. Yeah. Scalping was way more common than people. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, the people who lived in the Deep South were the sons of these nobility. They really only cared about money. They were trying to set up an aristocratic society. And I mean, they did set up an aristocratic society. Anyone who's been to like South Carolina knows this. It's a highly aristocratic society that is above all else about maintaining the dignity of the aristocratic families at the elite of that society, and everyone else serves in subject to that society. Next major cultural group would be the one out of Louisiana. They never really broke containment. They were the only I guess I'd say OG Catholic group in the United States. But they were weird. I mean, they had a lot of like weird occultist practices. They had a lot of weird, you know what I mean, right? Mm-hmm. French Cajuns, yeah. Then you had the Far West, which was made up of the frontiersmen and everything like that. And then you have the coast, like the coast on the far West Coast, mm-hmm. which it actually became very similar to the coast on the far East Coast, just like very woke, basically.
Why does
just
the
like
coast cause that?
Wealth.
Oh, true. That makes
the
sense.
Wealthiest cities are all on the coast, and wokeism basically was very focused on capturing those cities. And then you have the only region we haven't talked about is the like, I forget what it's called exactly, but it's like the New Mexico area, the portion of the United States that is heavily influenced by Hispanic culture. No, Maryland was not actually a Catholic colony. That's a common myth. Maryland was only 10% Catholic. It was the safest colony for Catholics, which had all of the other colonies think of it as the Catholic colony, but it was not actually predominantly Catholic. They didn't have predominant Catholic control and everything. There was no Catholic colony. There was no Catholics in early America, not into the Louisiana Purchase, not meaningfully. It was 2% maybe of the population at the time of the Revolution. Exactly double the number of states that let Catholics vote, let Jews vote. Jews were able to vote in twice the number of colonies that Catholics could vote in. One of the primary motivating forces that led to the revolution, the American Revolution, this isn't taught to you in textbooks, but go ask an AI, it'll tell you it's true, was that Britain was going to let Catholics vote in certain parts of Canada, and the colonies were afraid that Catholics might become allowed to vote in America. That is the degree to which Americans historically did not really like Catholics. It was founded, when people are like, America was founded as a Christian nation, I was like, no, it was explicitly founded as an anti-Catholic Christian nation. But yeah. Jews could vote if they said Jesus was the Messiah, so they converted to Christianity and they were still ethnically Jewish. I think they were allowed to vote even if they were fully Jewish in some colonies. So it depends. But yeah. And then America got its primary, the Great Replacement, as we have written in an episode, basically already happened. It was when we got all the Catholic immigrants from Ireland and Italy into the North that ended up replacing the Puritan communities in the North. and then the Puritans didn't have power anymore, and were largely bred into extinction by the Catholics, who used to have super high birth rates. Now they have super low birth rates, but they used to have super high birth rates. But yes, that is a cultural anthropology of the various major groups in the United States. There's many, somebody says, which explains Boston. Yeah, Boston used to be the Puritan capital of the world. I mean, if you heard Boston, everyone heard Puritan. That was where, in the colonies, if you're studying the colonial period, Boston, if Puritans are getting up to any shit, it's Boston, okay? And now everyone thinks of Boston as being a Catholic city.
You know, Chad, it all makes sense though, right? Like gold rush culture, I like extraction shooters. It's basically the gold rush of video games.
Yeah. Kirsch's got that Bostonian accent, right? Yeah, I like her accent. I like the Bostonian accent. It's a very pleasant, and I go so far as to say attractive accent. I guess I like it because it doesn't come off as pretentious at all. It's a very unpretentious accent.
Yeah, did you know about my favorite genre of video games, Malcolm? Do you know about extraction shooters?
Extraction shooters? Explain, what's an extraction shooter example?
You go into a place and you take shit and you kill people and take their shit and then you get out.